Night descended silently upon the city, enveloping the skyline in a chilly mist as the street lamps began to glow, one after another. Within the walls of St. Jude Medical Center, operations proceeded as anticipated. The cadence of the daily grind resonated through sanitized corridors, where nurses moved with purpose beneath fluorescent fixtures. Physicians spoke in low tones over medical files, and the gentle chime of life-sustaining equipment pulsed from behind closed doors. It was a night that carried an air of predictability, tranquility, and ordinariness. But then, abruptly, a profound and forceful impact shattered the peace of the main lobby. Glass vibrated within its frames. Chairs scraped across the gleaming floor. A deep, booming thud resounded through the reception area, as if something colossal had crashed into the building. Everyone froze in place. A nurse's clipboard clattered to the ground. "What was that?" she murmured, her eyes wide, just as a security officer dashed toward the main entrance. He was too late. The glass doors imploded with a thunderous blast. Shards showered down like frozen rain, spreading across the white tiles. From the wreckage, a shadowy figure emerged, broad, low-slung, and as resolute as a boulder. A wave of gasps swept through the lobby. It was a German shepherd. Yet, this was no ordinary dog. It was enormous and jet black, its dense fur coated with grime. With each measured step, powerful muscles rippled under its coat. Its cool, intent eyes surveyed the hallway before it. There was no sign of fear or aggression, only a clear sense of purpose. The dog advanced without pause. It strode through the lobby and vanished down the primary corridor, as if on a mission that only it could comprehend. The German shepherd progressed with an uncanny exactness, its claws clicking audibly on the sterile flooring. Nurses and patients flattened themselves against the walls, caught between the urge to scream, flee, or remain motionless. Hospital security personnel tried to block its path, but the dog neither barked, nor growled, nor lunged. It simply continued its steady walk, as though it had performed this action countless times. An orderly stepped forward, holding his arms out. "Hey, stop right there." The shepherd paid him no mind, passing by without altering its pace. It continued down the hallway, moving past rooms and nurses' stations, oblivious to the gasps, alarms, and rising confusion. Its attention was fixed on a point far ahead, something invisible to all others. The staff hurried along behind it, phoning in reports and attempting to understand how the animal had bypassed several entrances and security measures. But on a deeper level, none of them had the courage to touch it. There was something about its demeanor that felt distinct, as if it were not of this world but had emerged through the very fabric of destiny. On the third floor, room 207 lay in waiting. Inside, Nathan Cole was seated quietly by his daughter's bedside, her face looking pallid in the hospital's harsh lighting. The monotonous beep of machines provided a dull rhythm in the background. He had given up on prayer weeks earlier. Hope had long since dissolved into silence. Just then, the hallway seemed to vibrate with a new presence. A nurse's cry could be heard from down the corridor. Nathan glanced at the door just as it was thrown open with shocking force. There it stood, the shepherd, poised in the doorway, its chest heaving, its eyes trained not on Nathan but on the fragile girl lying still in the bed. It did not advance. It made no sound. It had completed its journey. Nathan Cole got up from his chair as though in a daze, his joints protesting, his heart racing. The room was silent, too, utterly still, save for the deep, even breaths of the dog in the entryway. He had not laid eyes on Ranger in months. The farm was hours from here, secured, fenced, and watched over. And still he was here. Nathan's voice was hoarse. "Ranger." The shepherd gave no sign of recognition. It remained like a stone figure, its gaze fixed on Emily. Dr. Marcus Everett, the physician in charge, had departed only minutes before, following another difficult discussion. "Nathan," he had stated softly, "we have exhausted all our options. Emily shows no response to treatment. There has been no brain activity for weeks. I believe it is time to consider letting her go." Letting her go. The words now reverberated like a somber, unwelcome tune in Nathan's mind. He had remained seated for minutes after the doctor's departure, unable to stir, his hands resting uselessly in his lap. The clinical scent of disinfectant felt more potent than ever, almost suffocating. His daughter, the center of his world, his only child, was slipping away. And there was nothing left for him to do, no more deals to propose, no promises to leverage, only emptiness. He had exhausted everything to save her. His savings were depleted, the land was mortgaged, and every available specialist had been consulted. Despite it all, his daughter lay before him, silent and unaltered. Nathan shifted his gaze to the dog. "How did you locate her?" He did not anticipate a reply. But in that moment, seeing Ranger's eyes locked on Emily's inert form, something stirred within him. A flicker of possibility, a question he had not dared to entertain. Was this merely a coincidence, or was it something more? The shepherd entered the room, its steps slow and intentional. Nathan instinctively raised a hand, uncertain whether to halt the animal, but ultimately did not. Ranger padded to Emily's bedside and sat. For a long moment, the room held its breath. Then, he tenderly rested his head on the mattress's edge, right next to her hand. A lump formed in Nathan's throat. Something was taking place, something that the doctors could not account for. Nathan looked at Ranger as if he were seeing a phantom. The last he'd seen of the dog was before winter set in, back at the farm where Ranger had always lived. Strong, devoted, and smart. But he was more than that. He was a member of the family, particularly to Emily. The memory resurfaced, unbidden. It happened years ago. A fierce snowstorm had descended far quicker than any weather service had foreseen. The winds roared like feral creatures, and the cold was so intense it pierced through layers of wool and leather. Nathan was outside inspecting the fences, ensuring the sheep were safe, when he noticed a small shape curled up near the pasture's edge. A trembling knot of fur, barely holding on to life. He almost walked away, almost. But Emily, only 7 years old then, was waiting on the porch as he came back, her eyes widening as she saw the puppy nestled in his jacket. "He's freezing, Daddy," she gasped, gathering the small creature into her arms. "We have to help him." Nathan had attempted to convey the long odds, that the pup likely wouldn't survive the night. But Emily paid no mind. She swaddled him in her own blanket, gave him warm milk, and remained by the fireplace with him through the night. Miraculously, the puppy pulled through. Emily named him Ranger. "He's brave," she had declared, stroking his ears, "and he always finds his way back." She had been right. He grew to be strong, protective, and loyal to her in a way Nathan had never witnessed in any other animal. Now, all these years later, that very same dog, her dog, was seated at her hospital bed, keeping watch over her once more. Nathan's hands shook. How had he traveled all this distance? And, more crucially, how had he known? Ranger sat peacefully at Emily's bedside, his head resting close to her hand. He made no sound, not a bark or a whine. He simply remained still, as if he understood he was on hallowed ground. Nathan stood immobilized, hardly daring to breathe. The monitors next to Emily maintained their quiet, systematic beeping. For months, their readings had been inert, stable but static, a flat line of data that left no room for hope. But then, a change occurred. The heart monitor wavered, just for an instant. A passing nurse stopped and stared at the display. She moved closer, a look of confusion on her face. "Did you see that?" she inquired. Nathan did not reply. His focus was on Ranger, who was still, apart from the gentle rise and fall of his chest. It happened once more. A flutter, a brief increase in the pulse. It was faint but clear. The monitor flashed with a soft persistence, as if the atmosphere itself had grown denser. The digital lines pulsed, not as random data, but like a murmur from another plane of existence, a heartbeat too faint, too deliberate to be a mere accident. There was something sacred in that flicker, something no machine could fully capture. The nurse leaned closer. "Could be just an artifact," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Machine interference happens sometimes. But Nathan knew differently. He felt it in his gut, in his very bones, in that part of a father that clings to hope even when everyone else has let go. He stepped nearer, his eyes fixed on the screen. The rhythm was not dramatically altered, but it was altered, vibrant, as though something long dormant was beginning to stir. Another nurse came into the room, soon followed by Dr. Everett, who was quickly updated on the situation. "Her vitals are fluctuating," the nurse informed him. "Slightly, but it's noticeable." Dr. Everett's brow furrowed. "It's likely just random neural firing reflexes. Her condition hasn't changed." Nathan turned to confront him. And what if it's not? What if she's trying to come back? The doctor let out a sigh, his voice weighed down by years of diminished hope. Nathan, I understand, but I've seen this before. It's not a sign. But at that moment, Ranger lifted his head just a fraction and released a single, deep breath. It was a low huff that seemed to slice through every ounce of doubt in the room. To Nathan, it was undeniable. The dog knew something they did not. Nathan remained by the bed, his hands clenched into fists, his gaze darting between the heart monitor and the dog still positioned beside his daughter. He wanted to believe with all his might, but logic, science, and the numerous reports piled in his study all led to the same grim reality. Emily was not returning. And yet, there was this dog. No, this protector, that had broken into a hospital as if summoned by a force far beyond mere instinct. Dr. Everett rested a hand on Nathan's shoulder. You've done more than most parents could ever do. We all reach a point where letting go becomes an act of love. Nathan recoiled. Love. Letting go. That wasn't love. Not in this moment. Not after what he had just witnessed. He had seen animals pass away before, on the farm and during the war. This did not feel like death. It felt like an interruption, as if her life had been put on hold. He took a steadying breath and faced the doctor. I want to see every report, every scan, every medication she's been given in the last 4 weeks. Dr. Everett's face hardened. Nathan, we monitor everything carefully. Nothing has changed. There's no need. There is now. His voice was quiet but unwavering. The doctor paused, then gave a reluctant nod. As soon as Everett was gone, Nathan took out his phone and navigated to a contact he hadn't dialed in years. His finger paused over the screen before he pressed it. The phone rang 3 times. Foster speaking. I need your eyes on something, Nathan said. It's Emily. Something's not right. A moment of silence followed on the other end. Then the response came, clear and decisive. I'm on my way. Nathan hung up and looked back at Ranger. The dog had not stirred. Whatever this was, it was far from finished. When Colonel James Foster entered the hospital, the atmosphere in the room shifted. He had no need to speak loudly or justify his presence. His bearing alone conveyed authority. Nathan led him into room 207 without a word. Emily was as still as before, unchanged. The machines blinked and beeped softly, a harsh reminder of how long they had all been waiting. And at her side, Ranger remained perfectly motionless, like a statue with a living heart. Foster accepted the medical files from Nathan and took a seat by the window. He leafed through them with a sharp, methodical focus. For 20 long minutes, he read without speaking, studying not only the drugs and procedures, but also the timelines, the dosages, and the progression of Emily's decline. At last, he let out a slow breath. Everything here looks correct, he stated. Dr. Everett followed standard protocol. There's no mistake. The words struck Nathan with the force of a slow, unseen blow. He had arrived prepared for a conflict, for a person to hold responsible, for a reason behind this tragedy. But there was no one to blame, no error to pinpoint, only the stark quiet of the facts. And that was even more painful. Nathan bowed his head, fighting to keep the wave of disappointment at bay. But Foster had more to say. There is something, though, he continued. It's not a solution, not really a treatment. It's a compound I helped create years ago, still in the experimental phase. It was formulated to stimulate low neural activity in situations where the body is stable but the brain is unresponsive. We never advanced very far in trials, only a handful of test subjects. Nathan looked up. And you think it might work on Emily? Foster shook his head gently. I don't know, but her profile, her vitals, her responses, it fits the theoretical window. Barely. There's no guarantee, not even a true expectation, but it could be something. Nathan turned to look at Ranger. The dog didn't stir, but his eyes met Nathan's with a look that transcended instinct. They were placid, unwavering, like the eyes of someone who had already accepted what must be done. Nathan's chest tightened. It wasn't just loyalty that had guided Ranger here. It was knowledge. Somehow, this animal had perceived the truth long before any of them. And in that look, Nathan found not a solution, but a question. Do you still have faith? He swallowed hard and then gave a slow nod. If there's even the slightest chance, we take it. Foster rose to his feet. I'll get what I need. The compound was delivered in a small glass vial, containing no more than a few milliliters of a transparent liquid. Colonel Foster handled it as if it possessed a weight far greater than its appearance suggested, the kind of burden felt not in the hands, but in the soul. Inside room 207, the lights emitted a soft hum, monitors beeped their steady cadence, and Ranger lay silently by Emily's bed, never straying from her side. Nathan stood at the bed's foot, arms folded tightly across his chest, holding himself upright through sheer force of will. Foster verified the dosage one last time. No promises, he reminded him. Just the smallest chance. Nathan nodded. That's enough. Foster gently rolled up Emily's sleeve and administered the injection with expert precision. The medicine entered her system without a sound. No alarms went off, no sudden beeps, only stillness. And then they waited. A minute ticked by, then another. Nothing. The heart monitor held its unchanging, flat rhythm. Emily's breathing was unaltered. Her hands rested limply on the blankets, pale and still. Nathan gazed at her face, desperate for any sign. A flicker of an eyelash, a twitch of a muscle, anything. But there was nothing. He backed away slowly and collapsed into the chair in the corner. His entire body felt leaden, as if it had finally surrendered after months of holding back fear, sorrow, and unanswered prayers. He let his head fall into his hands, and for a brief moment, he was just a father who had endured too much loss. It was finished, and then Ranger shifted. The dog's ears perked up. He cocked his head. Emily's fingers moved. Nathan glanced up, dazed, afraid to let hope Indiana. But it was real. Her hand twitched once more. Her chest rose with a deeper breath. The monitor emitted a sharper beep. He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding so fiercely it was painful, and then her eyes opened. Her gaze drifted until it settled on the dog beside her. A fragile, hoarse whisper. Ranger. Nathan fell to his knees beside her bed, his breath catching as if he were gasping for air underwater. His body trembled, not with fear, but from the immense weight of finally surrendering, only to be given back more than he had ever dared to wish for. Tears streamed down his face, but he made no move to wipe them away. He simply stared, as if trying to commit every detail of this moment to memory before it could vanish. His hand found hers, warm now and softly responsive, and all he could utter, over and over in a broken whisper, was, "Thank you. Oh God, thank you." He didn't care if it was science, a miracle, or a combination of both. His little girl had returned. The days that followed were a time of quiet attention and consistent recovery. Emily's body was frail, but her spirit, while still subdued, was undeniably there. Each new movement was a victory, each word a treasure. Dr. Everett stayed close throughout the process. He observed with a humbled quietude, no longer the authoritative voice in the room, but a man witnessing a reality he had not anticipated. He learned that sometimes medicine is not about being certain, but about having courage, perfect timing, and trust. "I didn't know this compound existed," he admitted to Colonel Foster one evening. Foster offered a slight nod. It wasn't ready, but she was. There were no arguments, no justifications, only a mutual respect for the risk they had taken and the life it had brought back. Nathan remained at Emily's side day and night. He no longer asked questions. He had no need for answers. Seeing his daughter open her eyes, take his hand, and tell a joke for the first time in months was all the validation he would ever require. And through it all, Ranger never left her. When she cried in the night, he would rest his head on her lap. When she finally laughed, a free and joyful sound, his tail wagged as if it were the most wonderful thing in the world. On the day of her discharge, the hospital doors swung open to a warm wind and clear skies. Emily emerged, moving more slowly than she once did, but with a strength no one had thought possible. Nathan carried her bag, walking just behind her, his eyes filled with a gentle light. But her gaze was only for Ranger. He trotted at her side, not as a symbol of a miracle, but as a companion, a member of her family who had stood unwavering through the ordeal, just as her father had. Neither of them had ever truly given up. And so they took the final step together, not toward a conclusion, but toward a new start they had fought for and earned, with a second chance walking loyally beside them.